Welcome to the Leaders on Shopify podcast, where merchants, app partners, and agencies share what it really takes to significantly scale your Shopify brand. So today I'm pleased to be chatting with Ben at Function18. I've known Ben in the industry for a long time, and he's been one of the first people to take luxury golf apparel online. So we're going to dig into Ben's journey, how from being a sort of failing physical golf retailer, how the move online and then the move to Shopify has helped him revolutionize his business. Let's get into it. So welcome back to Leaders on Shopify. Really pleased to say we've got Ben from Function18 with us today. And we're going to be talking all things selling golf gear online and on Shopify and his journey in e-commerce. So thanks for coming on, Ben. For those who don't know who Function18 are and what they do, what's Function18? What are you famous for?
Well, we're a specialist men's apparel golf wear retailer. We're pure online. We have been for 18 years. We've been in business for 20, but we came from a business that had golf stores before that. So we were in the golf industry previously, dealing with lots of brands on hardware and apparel, footwear, accessories, every category really in store. We had a lot of stores at one point, over 40, but they were all at golf clubs. It was a difficult business model because of the tight margin. We saw the potential in an emerging golf fashion specialist. There were a couple of retailers who were doing that online at that time, but it was really early days. And we saw the potential of moving into that apparel, slightly higher margin, something we were really interested in, and a market that was strong at the time. There were people like Ian Poulter and players on tour like that who were really setting the world alight with their trousers. It was just a bit more interesting. Up until that point, it had always been black pants and black tops and just no real consideration for what you would wear. It was an afterthought, really. And golf had been quite staid for a long time. It had been a very traditional sport, no change, no growth. So we wanted to try and get on board with that, really.
And so and when you went online, did you then just phase out the sort of traditional shops, or was it a clear cut?
We had to phase them out. We had stock in there and responsibilities with the brands that we dealt with, and we phased them out. I mean, it took some time and it wasn't easy, but we were lucky actually that we got some good advice with our first web developers. They were an agency who I knew quite well. We had a good relationship. They were called JP74, so they were a local Lancashire business. They were quite early into that web development space, and they were doing work with D&AD, and their designer Andy was a friend of mine. Andy still works for us 20 years later, so the relationship with the graphic designer was the kind of conduit, and that's how the business kind of started online. We had some pretty quick success with it in that we found it quite easy to get sales with the brands that we had good relationships with already. So we were lucky that side, the brand building relationship, trade relationships was already in place. That helped us quite a lot.
And was that sort of key? Because you probably already had the contracts in place to distribute certain products. And I bet in certain brands, there probably wasn't even a clause about whether you could sell it online or not. It was just you've got the ability to sell it, and then you're
it was a completely different world. The brands didn't really understand the online space or want to. They were quite happy to just get the business from wherever. There were some big retailers in golf at that point. Direct Golf were doing a big number online. Online golf was a big thing. American Golf was probably emerging, but they bought online golf. Online retail was just getting going, and golf was one of the forefront, I would say, generally.
You've been through over 20 years then. You've seen quite a lot of change. How many different platforms have you been to? Because you're now on Shopify and you're here, but what's been the journey to where you've got to today?
Yeah, well, we were initially on OSCommerce. That was the very first thing, but that was just a platform that our agency kind of put us in touch with and put us onto. I guess it's always something when you're working with an agency, it's what they're familiar with and what they are happy developing for. So that was the first iteration. We went on to Magento not long after that. I mean, probably within 18 months, we'd outgrown that and we realized we needed something else. So Magento was the next move. And then when we left JP74 just after 3 or 4 years, maybe 5. But that relationship just ran its course. They had different projects on, different they weren't really an e-commerce agency at that point. We ended up with a freelancer for a long time who was very good. Yeah, knew Magento inside out, was really easy to communicate with and work with. So that was the next stage. We had a lot of good years on Magento, but it's a behemoth, isn't it? It's a huge thing, and we managed to get it to a state where it was working for what we needed it to. What we did always have issues with was downtime, though. We would always have some piece of work we'd do would break something, and ultimately
you're not the first person who's ever said that. You update a product page over here and then the whole thing stops working.
Yeah. So it was complex, but again, you don't know any different, do you, when you're working through this journey, and everything seems like a progression. Magento seemed like a big step up for us, and with a good developer you could do whatever you wanted. It just probably was too complicated. Then we made the move to Shopify, which was in COVID, which was a horrible time to be going through a project like that. But we were working with Space 48 on that move. I really liked the guys there. I've always felt that I could get good, solid, honest advice from them if we asked questions. So we embarked on that project in 2020. And Shopify was the right move for us. I'm sure, in the first couple of years, probably there were people within the business that maybe didn't think it was the perfect fit. It was a step backwards in some regard, but...
What do you mean in terms of like customization or flexibility?
Yeah, I know the designer and flexibility around, it's great being able to launch apps, but if you're very conscious about how your website looks, which is what we are in our brand image, then we found it really difficult to put apps on the site that are going to look how we want them to look, and keeping that consistency across the apps is
that sort of high-end feel and luxury feel.
Yeah. It's even it was matching fonts. It should be really simple things from a design point of view, but you can install some apps and you can't use certain fonts with them. It just seems a bit ludicrous, especially when your fonts are things that are built into Apple devices by default, like Helvetica and So that was frustrating. There's workarounds, but then there's always that caveat conversation of whatever we do as a workaround. If the app updates, then that could break what we've done. So
have you got a list of apps then that don't work with the right fonts that we can share?
Well, we kind of just we trial things, and it can be quite a quick conversation to install it, try it yourself, see what flexibility you've got, and then I just know sometimes it's just not going to fit the brand.
Yeah. And then on Shopify now, how much are you doing yourself in-house versus agency support? How do you run the business now from a sort of Shopify and day-to-day point of view?
Yeah, well, for a long time, we were working with agencies. We're now not. There's like a reconciliation piece there, really. That's all it is. We're at a stage of just not putting the investment into the development that we have done over the previous years. So... But we've got the site to us, we're using Instant a little bit for product page design and blocks on the site. So we don't need a developer for that. We've always used Shogun. Shogun's another page builder tool, which we've found really easy for our designer to work with. So once we'd got the theme and the apps and the mechanics of the systems stuff in place for our business, we feel now that we don't really need the dev support that we've invested in over the years. And it just gives us flexibility. We've always needed that flexibility, and we've wanted to take ownership of things ourselves.
And I think conversations with other brands, when you actually sort of add it up, that sort of total cost of ownership, especially a lot of people think online's easy and online's got high margins compared to the high street. It's tight margins because it's so competitive. And actually, if you can reduce your cost to serve in your technology, then that's going to help you run a better business.
Yeah, you've always got to be very tight. We've come from, we've had 20 years of growth, and initially it was really steady growth, but we've done it all without any investment from a cash chunk. It was all because we took the business from a failing business from a store point of view and had to manipulate it into something else. So we're used to doing things on the cheap. That sounds terrible way of putting it, because we certainly don't project that. But no, we are very conscious about costs, and we run on very fine margins, so you have to be very careful about what you spend.
And you've also, when you've been growing and scaling the business, you've been probably in like Google ads and SEO and Facebook and everything right from the beginning. What's
Yeah.
worked well for you, and how have you sort of seen that change over time? Because that's sort of getting the traffic to the site is key when you sort of, and I suppose what's good for you is you've got established brands, so you're selling established brands that people will be
Yes.
looking for, but it's also
Yes.
highly competitive. So what's been working for you in the past? What changes have you seen around driving traffic to the site?
Well, we used to get just quite a lot more natural direct traffic. SEO stuff would be a bit easier. Obviously, with the Google results page, the way it's changed, I think that has all just been flipped on its head over the last couple of years. But, we've got more people to compete with than we ever had. I think the change to PMax for Google Ads, which probably, and actually Meta as well, and the kind of tools that those platforms are giving a smaller retailer do help a small. I mean, even Shopify, I think, is probably set up for a smaller retailer. I don't know the stats, but I would assume that the bulk of the businesses that they have on their platform maybe only have 50 products in their catalog. I mean, we're not huge, but we're into the 6,000 plus SKUs. So I actually don't think Shopify and Google, Meta, I think they really are, in the last couple of years, they've been really going after the smaller retailer, giving them the tools to be able to get on Google Ads, because it used to be such a minefield that you had to go to an agency that knew what they were doing. And I just don't think you need to do that anymore. It's still really difficult for a small retailer to make some money because they don't have the inventory that a brand like us do. You and I know that PPC is about efficiency as much as it is about getting sales.
The challenge we see a lot is Google's costs are just going up. If you actually take certain keywords and look over time, Google is a for-profit business. It's been quite interesting. I think for the first month ever, Meta make more money from advertising than Google.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that's quite interesting in a shift in behavior. And is that Meta's just got better advertising, or is how users are discovering a brand has changed? I don't know, because Meta seems to be moving more into that sort of UGC world. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We've seen loads of shifts, and I see a world where the value agencies offer, and that, as a former agency guy and a guy who's come from the agency world, I actually see more and more people, even bigger brands, moving in-house. Because what you were talking about is like the ad platforms are putting more and more AI to help people do stuff, and then you've got access to more and more AI to help you do stuff. So actually the value a brand has to bring is more about expertise, strategy, best practice, rather than the doing, because the doing can be taken care of by the platforms or by AI that you've got.
Yeah, I think the agency model was always going to change, because that is the disconnect with working with an agency. They don't have the knowledge and the strategy, that experience that we, the brand or retailer, have. And the difficulty is always kind of coaching them into that. There's always a period of them having to understand the industry to be able to sell in it. Golf is quite niche in that, you need to communicate with a golfer, you need to be able to speak their language, and most marketing agencies can't do that.
I don't know many golf-specific digital marketing agencies who only work with golf brands.
No.
So, and it's one thing understanding Google, but this is actually something we've been talking a lot about, is the brands who are winning now are the ones who really understand the different personas of their customer, right? And then communicate that. Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit different when you're a multi-brand retailer like us, but yeah, you're right. If you're a cycling retailer, you need to understand, you need to be able to play in the mindset of a cyclist, because all your marketing communication, it won't resonate, will it? And it won't land, and you won't get the engagement on any of your ads if you're not talking to those customers in the right way.
Yeah, and one thing that I witnessed this mainly through my children's friends. I've got two girls, as you know, and that they don't play golf, but all their mates who are boys at school are really into golf. And when I was sort of 18 at school, people weren't really that into golf in the same way like everybody's into golf. What do you think has changed there, and has that had an impact on your business? Are you actually seeing younger customers coming through?
Yeah, that's definitely shifted. The demographic has changed. I mean, golf for a long time was very old. I think the average age of a male golfer was 65, going back 15 years. average age of a female golfer was actually 10 years older, 75. Yeah, it was a retirement sport. It was a dying market. But yeah, in the last 20 years, I mean, the base of our customers are 35 to 45, have been since we started. But that 18 to 24 category is growing. That's where we've seen probably the biggest shift. I put that down to the sports people of the world and people being very transparent about their lives. And golf has always been a sport that people played. So it was something that professional footballers always did. Footballers could always play golf. It was the only sport they were allowed to play because they had plenty of time in the afternoon and they couldn't play and get injured. So actually now, when you get the likes of Harry Kane or Gareth Bale, they're very open and honest about how much they love playing golf. Carlos Alcaraz, Wimbledon champion, he mentioned it in his winning speech that he's going to go and play golf. And so, yeah, I think transcended and kind of thing that we can't talk about. We can't be honest and admit that we've got loads of time on our hands to play golf. It's now a sport that they're all talking about and proactively. Yeah, that's great for our game. I do believe golf. I was born into the sport as the son of a golf professional, but I had a different relationship with golf because of that. But I still believe golf is the ultimate sport. I mean, mentally, it's exhausting. Physically, it can be exhausting if you're playing at the highest level. I'm not saying that 18 holes on a Sunday is physically exhausting, but if you're playing 4 rounds of golf in a tournament championship, that is mentally and physically impossible to me, even someone who's played all my life. It's the pinnacle of sport for me. You need every skill.
I think, as you know, I play golf, but I'm not very good. And I have a very good pair of new golf shoes. And again, the last pair of golf shoes I bought was probably 20 years ago, and it was the black and white FootJoys, and there wasn't much choice. You can buy some. I got kiboshed by the wife and kids. I was like, I might wear my golf shoes out. Right, they're like a cool pair of shoes. Yeah. They are a really cool pair of shoes. Well, I think they are.
Well, no, you're right. It's moved completely. The fact that we've got an Adidas Originals golf collection. I know of one of the head designers at Adidas Originals, and he, for years and years, we'll never do Originals golf. We will never do it. It's not Adidas Originals. It's not our thing. Oasis festivals the two don't marry up. But now we have that. We've had that for a couple of years now.
Are you seeing? Is that shifting people, or is that helping attract people?
It's there's more and more things. People. I mean, we see it a little bit less in our business because we tend to be geared up for a serious golfer. I don't want to alienate people, but the brands that we stock are not really entry level. They're more the brands that you would go to once you've played the sport for a while and you're invested. You go, right, okay, I want to spend a bit more money. Some of our products are not premium. There's a lot of brands that we stock that are not in that sort of high price point market. But I think once you get a bit more serious into the game, you would come and look at us. We're not really catering for the starter, which is actually over the last couple of years where a lot of the growth in golf has come from. The game of golf is oversubscribed at the moment. For 10 years, before COVID, really, for 10 years, it was on the steady decline every year.
Well, golf clubs are closing down, or they were becoming a venue for events and funerals and wakes. Yeah. And it was more the golf club house was becoming a venue. And now there's waiting lists at golf courses, like the good golf courses, you can't get in. There's one near me, and I've got a 4-year waiting list to get in.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
the one thing about golf in this country is we've got limited space in the UK. So there was a period in the 90s where loads of golf courses cropped up on farmers' land, and they thought this is the boom we're going to have. And there's a lot of those on the outskirts of Leeds. But yeah, there was a time when there was way too many options with golf courses and pay and play and all those things. And now driving ranges. I'm quite close to the Trafford Centre in Manchester. They're building a huge extension on there at the driving range there. And for years and years, that was a business that was just on the decline. And that speaks to what life's like for everybody at the moment. People are a bit nomadic, aren't they? They are a bit less tied to things. And
In fact, one of our clients, he does this like membership where you can buy a membership with him and you can go and use lots of different clubs. It's like a sort of voucher scheme.
Yeah.
And that was quite good because people didn't want to commit to one club, but they were happy. They wanted to go and play at clubs that you had to be a member of. And this thing sort of got them in. So I agree with you. Golf's hard. And I'm a really impatient player and I just want to whack the ball.
It's a cruel sport. It's if anyone watched the Open, the finish to this year's Open is testament to how cruel it can be and how close it can be and how many permutations there can be to pick the winner. It's it's a brutal sport. And I've played a lot of sport. And if I'm being honest with myself, I went to sports like cycling and running and because you don't have the complexities that golf has. You literally, if you train harder and you run more and cycle more, you get stronger and you get better. And when you get into the racing and the tactics, you can really get into that, and that's where you can get the marginal gains. But golf is not like that. You can practice solid for 12 months and get worse. Yeah, it's a challenge, but that's what we like as well, isn't it? That is the benefit of golf. It is a challenge.
And it's proven being outside's good for your mental health. Yeah. And I think the whole body connection and everything. But we've done really well because normally on these podcasts, we spend loads of time talking about AI. We haven't talked about AI at all. but I'm going to change that now because one of the things in e-commerce we can't hide from is the use of AI, whether that be in ad optimization, whether that be in image creation, whether that just be internal tools and systems. So what have you been playing with? What's worked? What's not worked? What's your view on AI fitting in with your business? Whether it's inside Shopify, outside Shopify, what are you using? What's working?
Okay. Well, really, we're a creative business. That's where we start. We start with creative. So yeah, we've adopted tools to manipulate images and work on that and create stuff there. Video is a little bit more difficult. I think just the time and effort going into prompting and nailing down video seems harder at the moment, but we've had some good success with working with images. So that's good because it's saved us time and investment on photo shoots, really, which are things we've done over the years. I enjoy doing them. I enjoy the people I work.
No more company trips to Portugal to take the photos.
No, we did a lot more studio work than that, which was happened quite locally. But it's it's AI is a great facilitator for product shops and for things that we use it quite heavily for that at the moment, and we'll continue to. I don't see that changing. But I also think with AI, the number crunching, reporting, the power that is in that, writing summaries from, compiling 20 different spreadsheets and the ability that AI's got to look over those and draw up a holistic view of it all is mind blowing, really. So that's what we tend to use it for. I know we've dabbled at using Ask Bosco a little bit, which is what that is, isn't it? It's pulling data from lots of different sources, and we're just starting that journey.
What are the other sort of apps, because you've been on Shopify a while compared to maybe some people listening, what are the sort of go-to apps that you rely on that help you run your business?
The big ones that stand out. We use Clayvu a lot. Clayvu is a big thing on our site for handling category pages and merchandising, really, on-site merchandising. Klaviyo is one that we've always had, the tools in Klaviyo just keep growing. I think that's a really powerful platform. What else are we using? I mean, honestly, Instant is great, and the tools that gives you as a smaller business is just great to be able to cut out the link between a graphic designer and a developer. If you've got a designer who can build something and publish it on the site without the need to communicate with a development team or a developer is brilliant. Huge flexibility with that. There's lots of smaller things, but there's so much choice, isn't there, in the app world? There's just
it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Yeah. It's like the volume of apps, and also now with people vibe coding stuff, people are spinning up apps all the time. And one of the bits, I was actually in Toronto with Shopify at the .dev conference, and one of the bits of feedback they were saying is the apps that are winning at the moment, the ones that actually got real human beings who can actually answer the phone and talk to people how to use it, rather than just a faceless sort of bit of tech.
The reporting app world that's something that I've been kind of introduced to as they emerge, like the analytics pieces and the MCP connectors and all these different things that can pull information into a Claude or a ChatGPT, and you can write prompts from there and you can ask questions, and that is so powerful. I think, it's like having a PA, isn't it? It's like having somebody specialist you can just go to. I mean, I do think we're putting a hell of a lot of trust in them getting things right and reporting back the right information. We're still in that world of having to check things, but if you want to get top level information, it seems quite easy to get that even out of Meta. I'm testing that with Claude and the MCP connector there, and asking it questions about creative and how that creative's performing, asking it questions about when things are hitting levels of ad fatigue, and it's not giving perfect results.
Based on some feedback from some of our e-commerce agency partners and some of our clients on Ask Bosco, in the next few weeks, we're actually going to be putting the creative into Ask Bosco. So then you can join up what creative drove what product sales, but more importantly, what profit at a product and the creative level, to see exactly that, and which creative are we still spending money on that actually haven't driven any actual sales or profit and everything else. But what other online brands do you sort of look up to? Do you think are doing a really good job? Not necessarily in the golf space, but you're like, I really rate what those guys are doing.
Well, as a cyclist, the one that we always looked at was Rafa. We always thought Rafa did a fantastic job from a brand perception. They had a clear story. The messaging was always consistent. That's probably one that stands out as in sportswear. I mean, stores wise, ProDirect we thought were great as a multi-brand retailer. Really slick operation into lots of categories. We like the way that they conduct themselves and the assets they produce. You can tell that they spend a lot of money on that. You can tell that they're a big team that are creative. So we deal with brands that are like that, the likes of Adidas, and they're doing a lot of this for their own direct to consumer now. And for years it was really difficult, but now we know that because they have their own direct to consumer model, they understand how important it is to have assets for the online space and to be able to market the product. So we're getting things that they're using themselves, which isn't ideal in an Instagram organic world. It wants unique content, doesn't it? But actually,
I suppose you could take that and change it with a bit of AI and make it unique.
You can, I guess the legalities of that, they've signed off on the model, and the licensing for image rights is a grey area there, isn't it? But to populate the site and to put email campaigns together and all those things, it's really helpful that those brands are doing that.
And with that, because I suppose when you first started, a lot of the golf brands weren't doing any D2C at all.
Yeah.
And is that
they're all at it now, yeah.
I know, that's what I mean. So are they eating your lunch, or is that just increasing demand, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. It's very difficult to take out the effect of that. It's a continual frustration of ours when direct to consumer sites are actively driving orders and business, like through first order sign-ups, discounts on first orders. If you go on adidas.com, you can get a discount. You'll find a way of getting a code on your first order. So that's frustrating, but we do know we can offer a better level of customer service than those guys. It is a different experience shopping with us. It's the thing that brands want because they see the high profit margin in those direct to consumer sales. If they're cutting out the middleman, us, the wholesaler, then of course they're going to want that business, but it is damaging to the wholesale business. And, we've got brands like Nike who completely wanted to get rid of all their wholesale business. They had an approach to kind of not focus on that. And maybe that's with JD or Foot Locker on the high street. There was definitely a change in their strategy. Whereas Adidas's CEO has always been, wholesale is massive for our business. It's telling a story. It's giving us visibility. We can't cut that off. So it's a balancing act. I think it's like it's like marketing mix, isn't it? You need to do a bit of everything.
Then you've got to sort of keep testing and learning and repeat what seems to be working.
Yeah, but I don't agree that Adidas.com or Nike.com should be actively discounting. I don't think they should be. I understand that there's e-commerce directors and people in those businesses that have to hit a number, but I don't think that
they're devaluing the brand. Yeah.
Well, they are. Yeah. I mean, you should be, if you go on those sites, you shouldn't be going looking for a discount, should you? On the high street, you wouldn't get that. So it seems strange that they operate in in a different world in the online space.
And one thing when we talk to brands and we talk about it was the talk of the town in Toronto was agentic commerce. What one of the talkers said, he said it's a bit like teenage sex. There's lots of people talking about it, but not many people doing it, right? And in terms of like, everybody's getting excited about people are going to have agents going on to ChatGPT or Claude and actually buying things. Do you see people writing a Claude script or a bot or something to go and do their shopping for them? Or is it more about it?
I certainly do. I mean, maybe not in every retail space or industry, but I think in ours, it's so price driven. We are very particular about how we look as a store and what the experience is of shopping with us. But actually, I don't think that's the norm really in golf. I think there's that functional Amazon-esque, it's not a great shopping experience from an apparel perspective, but actually you get what you want, it's delivered quickly. I think the psyche of our kind of customer is a little bit more inclined to take the easy route. And agentic commerce would probably tick a box. It's a complete change to how we operate, and it can only erode margin because it's just basically it's to the bottom on price, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it depends, because I might put a query in rather than what's the cheapest, I might put what's the best, or what's the best quality, or what's going to last me the longest. And then, because again, I think shoes are an interesting one always. If you buy a cheap pair of shoes, they wear out and break really quickly, and you'll end up buying 3 or 4 pairs of shoes. That's something my father was very adamant about. One thing you should spend some money on is shoes. So I suppose it depends where you show up in that. And I think if you've got the right quality content,
there is a point where the quality, it's substandard, isn't it? You don't get the quality you want, and that's price related. With apparel, I don't think it's quite like that. We spend a lot.
People want a brand.
They want a brand, and we pay a lot for a brand because we can show it on our chest and our brand mark, and the quality is often not any different. But people buy into the brand, they buy into that sense.
And what it says about them, or what it says about the pro that wore that brand as well, which is then they're sort of almost joining that club because they want to be like Ian Poulter.
That's why I quoted Rafa before, because that is absolutely that. In cycling, you were either a Rafa guy or a ASOS guy, but it's just the product is good, but is it 3 times as good because it's 2 or 3 times more expensive? Yeah. Well, we justify it with comfort, don't we? Which is the same as a golf shoe. You want something that's comfortable. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what agentic commerce is going to bring, John, but it is going to change things quite. I mean, that is what AI is doing. It's changing things very quickly over a very short space of time. We're changing the way we look at staffing. We're changing the way we look at agencies. We're changing the way we do everything. And it's all a bit unknown at the moment because I think AI is doing a good job. It's not doing a perfect job. It's not there yet, but we're all kind of waiting for what's coming next. What can it do next?
It's just fascinating, the energy and rate of change. And I think it's been in e-commerce. We've seen a lot of change over many years, but it has been over many years. It seems like if someone had said to me this time last year, would you feel comfortable putting your whole product catalog into an AI and getting different variants? I'd have said, no, it's not ready. Now, there's apps out there where you can just plug your product category in and go, right, give me different versions in different colors and whatever, or different scenarios. And you feel comfortable doing that now. And you still obviously check everything, but there might come to a world soon
we don't
where
do it. We don't check everything. That's the point.
Yeah.
That's
the worry. That's the scary.
Everything. And that's why we're using AI in the first place, because we haven't got the time to do everything properly that we want to do. There's lots of things that AI has helped us kind of discover we need to be doing, and we get started with that. But I think it's very difficult to be so thorough and follow it through to the very end and sense check everything. But again, that's why I think agentic shopping will be a thing, because lives for most people are stressful and they haven't got enough time. And this is a way of making things happen.
I think golf balls maybe, but I think if it was an expensive polo shirt, probably not. Or certainly I don't think people are buying golf clubs agentically yet.
Yeah, but what you would let it do is give you 5 options and you just pick one.
Yeah, you might do, and then we'll get it to monitor. But I've written my own flight tracking price monitoring tool in Claude, because it's like this really complicated set of flights to go to India. And I'm getting it to give me an update every week on the price movement, and they're getting it to predict when's the best time to buy the flight. Years ago, that wouldn't have I couldn't have done that. And then Skyscanner built the first UK unicorn from doing something similar. I've actually built in potentially more functionality with my own little Claude thing. But that sort of monitoring of stuff.
I mean, the adoption of these AI tools has happened pretty quickly. I was a free user of ChatGPT and a free user of Claude, and it didn't take me long to be putting subscription details in and using. I'm not saying I use the tools any more than I did when they were on the free things, but we quite quickly get into habits of using them and relying on them.
Yeah, it becomes a different way of working, and the amount of time you spend doing stuff. I'll give you a really useful case. So I've just come back from this conference in Toronto, and you're trying to connect and meet loads of new people. And I just started taking photos of people's badges because we didn't even have time to do the whole let's connect on LinkedIn thing. And then that evening I went into Claude and I said, can you look at my photos? Can you then pull all the contact details off the badge, then go onto LinkedIn, get me the LinkedIn URL, and then send them a great to meet you today message on LinkedIn and connect with them. And it's like, that would have been a morning of faffing about on LinkedIn, trying to find everybody and connect with them.
In certain roles, if you've got a way of even thinking that way, like it's a creative thought process, an entrepreneurial skill to be able to even think that way, isn't it? And go, okay, I could get Claude to do this for me.
We were discussing that over dinner the other night. It is the one job Claude isn't going to replace is entrepreneurs.
No, well, it's aimed at them.
It's going to turbocharge the curious entrepreneur who wants to answer questions and do stuff. They're going to find more AI tools to sort of help.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's who it facilitates most. I mean, it doesn't hurt.
The other part of that dinner conversation was it's going to be like the industrial revolution for the factory worker, where it all became a lot of autonomized stuff, is what's happening to maybe some of the white collar workers with AI. Yeah. This has been fantastic. We could talk forever, Ben. If people want to find Function18 or find you, where do they need to go?
Function18.com, pretty straightforward. Or they can email me at ben@function18.com if they really want to. I'm a busy boy, but I do like to hear from our customers. And if anyone's got...
What are the best sellers? What do you sell the most of?
Well, we're doing really well with Nike. We have for a while now. I mean, it's a powerhouse, isn't it? Adidas has been a strong brand over the last couple of years as well. You know, the Originals collection is great. We love that stuff. It's rocking the boat, which is what golf needs. We're all about getting rid of the old traditions and kind of stirring things up a bit. You know, you talked about footwear before and it becoming like trainers and athletic, and that for years was frowned upon in golf, but now it's where it's at, really.
It's been excellent having you on. Thank you for taking the time. We need to go for a game of golf or a cycle.
We do, yeah, we do.
Thank you for listening to today's Leaders on Shopify podcast, which was sponsored by Ask Bosco AI Analytics and Insights. To find out more about Ask Bosco, visit askbosco.io or search Ask Bosco in the Shopify App Store.